Welcome back to another episode of Between the Lines with your hosts, John Myers and Jack Tobin. Today, March 7th, we'll be taking a look at some recent Chicago sports games, big news in sports, including a big NFL name movement around the league, taking a look at some of the start of spring training, and much more. All right, so starting off, we have some game analysis, including the Chicago Bulls facing off against the New Orleans Pelicans on March, 5th? Yeah, I believe so.
It was the third, I think.
The third? Okay, yeah. So, you get a chance to watch that game, Jack?
I did. Some of the quick things I saw is Levine obviously scoring 36. Kobe White had a big game, and a surprise to me was Thaddeus Young, who had 18. What do you think about Thad Young, a veteran off the bench?
Like you said, he's a veteran. I think he provides a lot to the team, just in terms of his leadership skills. Obviously, he's not putting up 18 every night, but I think he's been decently consistent. He's just kind of a good role player off the bench, someone that's pretty reliable to come in and jumpstart the game or the offense if need be. But honestly, I don't think that the offense has been needing much help. But as you mentioned, Levine had 36. I think he's been looking great. Obviously, his All-Star year. I think he's just been a great asset to the team, and overall, I think they look like a pretty solid team, in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah. Patrick Williams kind of had a surprising night. He had 13 points for a rookie. That's pretty good in his first year. Denzel Valentine had 11. Mm-hmm. It was an overall good performance by the Bulls, taking down a young, good team like the Pelicans.
Yeah, the Pelicans, towards the end of the stretch, it was getting a lot closer than I thought it should have been. I think they had a pretty commanding lead up until like 5 minutes left in the game. They had some pretty costly fouls towards the end. I want to say there were at least like 3 possessions in a row where the Pelicans were just putting up shots. A couple of them were threes, and the Bulls ended up fouling. So I think the game was a lot closer. The score kind of showed it was a lot closer than it really was. I think the Bulls were up by like 20 at half. So
yeah, it ended as a 4-point game.
Yeah, so I think the Bulls, the score doesn't show how good the Bulls played that game, but I think they're looking pretty good. I want to say they're currently 9th in the Eastern Conference at 16 and 18. So I think they have a chance to move up to the 7th seed. They're only 1 game behind the 7th seed. So I think that could be an easy bump up. And I think they have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs this year. So that should be interesting moving down the stretch.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next up, we have the Blackhawks game. They faced off against the Tampa Bay Lightning on last Friday, March 5th. The game went into overtime and eventually a shootout where the Hawks took the W home. What did you think about that game, Jack?
Yeah, I thought Subban had a phenomenal game in goal. Obviously, I think he faced like 42 shots around there, or maybe it was like 45 with 42 saves. He had a crazy game. On top of that, DeBrincat had 2 goals. And it was kind of cool because he had his 100th goal and 200th point in the same goal. So that was a pretty special moment for him. And also, I think Boquist had, 2 assists. So I think it was a pretty good performance against probably the best team in the league and the defending Stanley Cup champs.
Yeah, going back to Malcolm Subban, I really think he performed good, especially he had some crucial saves in overtime. Speaking of which, I haven't really gotten a chance to watch a whole lot of NHL games this season. So this was the first time I've seen a 3-on-3 overtime game, which I know it's been a while that's been out, but I noticed like it's a lot of breakaways and just a lot of scoring opportunities. And I think Malcolm Subban really kind of proved himself during that time, kind of saving the game. And then had a shutout in the shootout, which was obviously very crucial. So, I thought he played great that game.
I know it's been a little bit, but going back to the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers completely destroyed the Chiefs 31-9. And I was just thinking, John, who do you think really stood out during that game?
I know it's kind of a general statement, and this is kind of for the playoffs as a whole. But I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense really stood out to me. I mean to keep the Chiefs from scoring a touchdown the entire game. Obviously, they're one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Patrick Mahomes, probably not probably the best quarterback right now in the league. Will likely go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in history with the trajectory he's on. And obviously they have some huge offensive threats: Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. So I mean, I think their defense, just to shut them out or keep them preventing from scoring a touchdown, just really kind of makes a statement that they're one of the top defenses in the league. And even watching them throughout the entire playoffs, I think they were great, honestly. So that's who stood out to me. What about you?
Yeah. Honestly, you could say anyone on the Tampa Bay offense, really, Tom Brady, whatever. But I really want to talk about like Patrick Mahomes. I feel like he played great. He had some insane throws, and he just got no help from his offensive line. I think he had one or two tackles injured. The best tackles for sure injured. He had a couple passes just go through guys' hands in the end zones. So
Yeah.
I just think Patrick Mahomes played very well. Just his team had nothing to do with it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, looking at the kind of the end of the game, it seemed like Mahomes was getting pressured every single play. He was out of the pocket nearly like for the majority of every single play. And I think that's a lot contributed to the good defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their pass rush. But there should be no offensive line that's letting even that quality of a defense get to their quarterback that often. And then, as you mentioned, they had a couple drop passes down the stretch that were really costly. So I don't put any blame on Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, I think it was just his surrounding pieces that kind of let him down, which is very surprising for the Kansas City Chiefs. As I mentioned, they were one of the best teams in the league. So, yeah.
Yeah. Travis Kelce played well. I think he had 10 catches, 133 yards. He played great. Tyreek Hill on paper didn't look bad. He had 7 receptions for 73 yards. But I know he had a couple drop passes, and one was at the goal line off his helmet, I think. Sammy Watkins had 1 catch. Demarcus Robinson had 1 catch. His running backs, I don't think, had too many yards. He had Hilaire had 64 yards on 9 rushes. Yeah, just Mahomes was always moving. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah. So talking about the Super Bowl for next year, how do you think the next year's Super Bowl will look compared to this Super Bowl?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think the 49ers will go back. They'll get a quarterback this offseason, and they have George Kittle. They have that great defense. Nick Bosa will come back. They were kind of just destroyed with injuries. I think the Niners will be back in the Super Bowl. And on the other side, I think the Ravens will probably will. I don't know why. I just have this weird feeling that the Ravens will make a run this year. They've been one of the best teams the past couple of years, but just never been able to make it past the second round.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Ravens, I mean, they're just such a touch and go team. I feel like, they're very inconsistent. At least they have been the past couple of years. Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, has been kind of inconsistent. Obviously, he had his MVP season, but then he's still a great quarterback in my opinion. I just think that he hasn't really shown that he can be consistent throughout an entirety of a season, which I feel like could affect them in terms of making a deep playoff run. So
Yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, 2 years ago they had I think like a 12-4 season or 13-3 season. So throughout the whole regular season, they played great until they ran into Derrick Henry. But
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I think that's a valid Super Bowl prediction. Personally, I think it's despite their kind of lackluster showing in this year's Super Bowl, I think that would be a safe bet to say that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to make it back for the AFC. And in the NFC, I feel like it's kind of tough. I mean, there have been a lot of teams that I don't think that the Buccaneers will make it back. Um, I think that on one team that could possibly make it could be the Packers, despite their recent, or not necessarily recent, but inability to make it past the NFC Championship the past couple of years. I feel like they just have such a great offense. I mean, this year they had arguably the best offense in the league. The combination of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams is just deadly. Um, their defense has been pretty solid the past couple of years. So I think if they're able to just kind of string together some wins in the playoffs, they could easily make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. The one thing I would have against the Packers, and I might be wrong here, is I think they have some expiring contracts on defense. I might be wrong, but that's like the one thing I could pick out about the Packers that did not play or is not going well for them right now. I feel like they're always just one of the top teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would be a safe bet to say that they'll make it atop the NFC North this year. I think that the NFC North is such a, I would say it's been highly dominated by the Packers the past couple of years. Obviously, they have the Bears were top 12-4, I think, in 2018, and the Vikings in like 2017, maybe. I don't know. But for the majority of the time, the Packers have been in it, so it's safe to say that they'll make the playoffs. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll be able to string some wins together in the playoffs.
Yeah, for like the past decade, they've always been the top.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, I think that their defense is definitely their weak point. Not even that it's such a weak point, as it's just the weakest link between their offense and defense. I think, as I mentioned, they have one of the best offenses in the league, one of the best running backs in the league, one of the best wide receivers in the league, and arguably the best quarterback in the league right now.
That's who has an expiring contract. I think their running back has expiring contract.
I know Aaron Jones is a free agent, but I would easily see them re-signing Aaron Jones. So I think that would be
I think it's just a matter of their cap space, if they can cough up enough money in that cap space to get him.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. But if they are able to make some big re-signings this year, I could easily see them having another great offensive season. So
yeah.
All right. Sticking with the NFL, some more recent news in the NFL. Some recent trade news with J.J. Watt recently signing with the Arizona Cardinals. What do you? Obviously, that's a big name moving around the league. Someone that's kind of probably towards the end of their career, but is still one of the top players at their position. So, what do you think about that signing, Jack?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised actually. I know he's got Hopkins there, but I was thinking he was going to go to either like Green Bay or maybe Pittsburgh if they could get under the salary cap somehow, which was very doubtful. But Arizona was kind of surprising to me. I mean, it makes sense. He's going back with Hopkins. They've got a young quarterback in Murray. They've got Chandler Jones there. They've got a solid team now, especially with Murray developing more. I feel like they could very easily make a push.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. As you mentioned, they had a big signing last year or 2 years ago, was it? Yeah, 2 years ago, and Deandre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the league. They were just kind of on the cusp this year. I think they finished 8-8, and the Bears just beat them out due to the wild card rulings. So I could definitely see them making a playoff push with that signing. It kind of obviously is going to be a big help to their defense, which was, I don't know. I don't want to say it was the weaker link between their two. What do you think about that? Like, do you think the Cardinals had a better offense or defense this year?
Yeah, I would probably say they have a better offense because they have some pretty decent wideouts and they have a good backfield. So I think the only part of their offense would be their offensive line is not the best, but their defense is very solid. They got edge rushers with Watt, Chandler Jones. They got Budda Baker back there. They still have Pat. So it's a solid team. And I just can't believe they got Hopkins for a second-round pick.
Yeah, that was still such a stupid signing in my opinion.
Well, it wasn't a signing; it was a trade,
Or a
and
trade, yeah, because they got who did
they sent away like a second
who
round
was it?
pick and a seventh round pick for the
And
best wideout in the league, or the
no,
top
I know they got
wideout.
who's the running back?
They got David Johnson with them, who
Yeah, David
he was
Johnson.
good for
But
like 2 years, and then has been injured and has
yeah,
not been
he
the
hasn't
same.
really done anything on the Texans, so I just goes. I mean, proves even more that was kind of a stupid signing by the Texans. I mean, the Texans they're in some deep water right now.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien, their former head coach before they fired him, had too many, like not don't want to say moral, but like personal beef with people. I guess like he
Yeah,
would take things way too personally and just trade him for nothing because some.
yeah. Well, it's kind of crazy that they went from the AFC Championship. I mean, even more specifically, being up 24-0 in the AFC Championship against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean,
No,
I
you're thinking of the Titans. Wait,
no,
am I
it was
wrong?
no, it was the Chiefs. It was I want to say 2018.
The conference championship in 2019 was against the Titans, and the
Yeah,
Chiefs played the Texans in the division.
I'm talking about 2018 when right. I know they played the Chiefs. I don't know
Yeah,
if it
they
was.
played. It wasn't the conference. They played the Chiefs in the divisional in 2019 because then the Chiefs went to play the Titans in the conference, and then the Chiefs played the 49ers in the Super Bowl.
Okay, that's what it was. So I knew they were up against the Chiefs in the playoffs. Um, and and then obviously the trade merged with Deshaun Watson. So it's just kind of crazy that they're losing all these big name players in the past couple of years.
All right, now looking at more of a Chicago NFL type of segment. So the Bears really need a wide receiver with Allen Robinson not under contract for next season. I was wondering, John, who do you think they should go after, if anyone, or go after someone in the draft?
Yeah, I mean they still haven't re-signed Allen Robinson or Cordero Patterson, for that matter. So they're obviously evaluating their wide receiver options. I think. There's some big name. There's some like this is a good free agent wide receiver year, I would say. You have guys like obviously Allen Robinson not available for re-signing. But then you also have Chris Godwin, Juju, Kenny Galladay, Will Fuller, Marvin Jones, Corey Davis, just to name a couple. So I don't know. Out of those guys, I would personally the best guy I think out of that list would probably be Chris Godwin. If for that, I would say if they don't re-sign Allen Robinson, I think Allen Robinson would probably be the best option for the team. Obviously, just because he's been on the team for a couple of years now, um, he performed very well. I think he's had, I want to say, just a couple, two 1,000 yard years, um, two or three maybe. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I would say he's a top 7 wide receiver in the league.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the best option would be re-signing Allen Robinson. But in the case that doesn't happen, I would probably go with Chris Godwin. He's really just been a solid piece for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers alongside Mike Evans. So I think that if he were to come to Chicago, he would be just one of those guys that makes an instant impact on the team. So that would probably be my guy. Yeah, what about you?
I think the Bears have like 2 more days to franchise tag Robinson. I think the deadline is either like March 9th or it might be later in the summer. But I don't think the Bears will be able to go out and get anyone. Their salary cap, I think they're already over the salary cap for next year. So, I mean, they have the right to franchise tag Robinson, but I think they would have the best option is to franchise tag and then trade him, get something out of him. I mean, if you wanted to go after one of those guys, the best would probably be Chris Godwin. He's probably the best wide receiver in that class. And I mean, you would have to give up like an Eddie Jackson and trade and get only draft capital in return because he's making so much money.
Yeah, well, I heard that they were actually planning on restructuring a couple guys' contracts, and I think Eddie Jackson was one of those guys that was in that conversation to have their contract restructured, which would be, I think, a good idea just because he's making so much money and he hasn't really been productive the past couple of years. I also think Jimmy Graham was one of those guys, so they're definitely looking at clearing up some cap space. So I would hope that they'd be able to sign someone like Chris Godwin this offseason. But
Well, I definitely think Jimmy Graham will get cut. I don't think he'll be back for
yeah,
the contract reason, and it really restructuring a contract really like depends on the player. The player doesn't want
yeah,
his contract restructured. You can't really do much about it. You can't force him. So
yeah.
I don't know if Eddie Jackson will want to. I mean, he's making a ton of money, and I don't know if he's a guy where they can just cut and not have to pay him anymore. I don't know if he has a fully guaranteed contract or anything.
Yeah.
So I still think the best option for them is drafting a wide receiver in the first round.
So, no, yeah. I mean, I definitely think that drafting a wide receiver would be an option for the Bears. I don't know if I'm too fond on unless you're getting a guy um, that was really proved himself in college. Um, then it definitely is a solid option. I just think that money aside, definitely picking up a free agent wide receiver that's already proved himself in the NFL would be the best option. It's just kind of a guaranteed, getting a solid player that will help the team right away. So, um, yeah, I think Chris Godwin's probably the best free agent that they could pick up. But as you mentioned, drafting one is also an option, and then re-signing on Robinson also is also an option. So they still have plenty of options this offseason. I'm interested to see what they're going to do in terms of quarterback situation, wide receiver situation, who they draft. I think it's going to be a kind of a make or break offseason, in my opinion, for the Bears. So,
Yeah, money is holding the Bears back so much. They just don't have money.
yeah, I think that kind of pretty much sums up the Bears' current situation. So, if we move on now, the MLB has recently started spring training, which is a great sign for me. Means spring and summer right around the corner, so that's always a good sign. Plus, baseball is right around the corner, so yeah, I'm really glad that spring training is starting to kick off. And I was wondering what you kind of thought about the league, how it's looking so far. Any teams that you think are going to be good this year?
Yeah, so you got the teams like the Dodgers, the back-to-back repeats could easily happen, especially with signing Bauer, the Cy Young. You got the Yankees. You got, I mean, the Blue Jays now with that young core. They picked up some guys in free agency like Simeon. I think the Blue Jays are looking very nice. You got the Cardinals now who aren't bad with Arenado. Um, I mean, there's a lot of teams that could be very good this year. What
Yeah,
about
one
you?
team I think could be also very good is the Padres. I think the Padres are looking really good. They also have a pretty young core with guys like Fernando Tatis. They also made some big signings to their pitching rotation. They picked up Yu Darvish. Blake Snell was also a big signing to that rotation. So I think they're one team that could look out for this season.
Yeah, they didn't even give that much up for Snell and Darvish. I think that in the Snell trade, they gave up more. They gave up Francisco Mejia, who's one of the top prospects at the catcher position, and they also gave up starting pitcher. His name is blanking on me. He's also a top prospect. Damn. Well, he's like I think his name's Patino. He's another top prospect. But in the Cubs trade for Darvish, they only gave up 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, guys that aren't even close to being in the show. So they
Yeah.
made some big moves, and I think they're going to be probably. I don't know if that division's so tough, bro. Between the Dodgers and Padres, that's going to be a fun one to see in
Yeah.
October, September.
Yeah. Well, looking at some more, obviously we mentioned, the Dodgers, the Padres. I think you mentioned the Rays, but also looking at some more local Chicago teams. You have the Cubs and the Sox. What do you think they're looking like this year?
Yeah, the for the Cubs team, the Central is very weak. I mean, you got the worst team in the league in the Pirates. You got the Reds who they gave up Bauer in free agency. I think they lost a couple other pieces. The Cardinals are actually looking pretty solid now with the Arenado trade. They got Goldschmidt and Arenado, probably the top duo at the corners. Maybe Bryant and Rizzo if they pick up this year.
Hmm.
Um, and the Brewers, I mean, the Brewers all depend on Christian Yelich. If Yelich doesn't have a good year, the team will not have a good year.
Yeah.
And then, in the Sox division, I mean, you got the Indians who I don't think will be too good this year. You got the Twins who will be good. You got the Royals who will probably not be that good, and
Tigers.
yeah, the Tigers who definitely will not be good. Tigers look like a team that have a lot of potential in the next coming years. They're just not there yet. And the Sox roster honestly might have one of the best rosters on paper in the league. I mean, you got Tim Anderson at short, and left you got Eloy, and center you got Robert or Robert, however you want to pronounce it. In right field they got Adam Ean now, and maybe some other guys off the bench. At second, you got Nick Mandrigal, who's a young guy. At first, they obviously got Abreu. They've got Vaughn there, who's a young guy that can hit the ball. And their rotation is very good. They got Keuchel, Giolito, and Lance Lynn this offseason. And in the bullpen, they picked up Liam Hendricks, one of the best closers in the league. So I think the Sox have a very solid roster.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely I could easily see them being atop the AL Central this year. Um I do you think they'll do anything in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I think they honestly can make a World Series push this year. It's really a matter of pitching and staying healthy. Um, you would have to go through the Yankees and the Blue Jays maybe if they make it in, and then I'm trying to think of the AL West, who's like a top team out there. It's kind of looking somewhat weak.
Astros.
Yeah, the Astros aren't looking too good this year. I mean, the Angels actually looking pretty good. Shohei Otani's coming back so he can pitch again and hit.
Hmm.
And you obviously have Mike Trout. You got a guy like Joe Adell coming up. At short, you got Iglesias, who's new there. You got Rendon. And then you got
Yeah.
just the veteran pool.
Yeah.
So things are looking good as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, comparing the two Chicago teams and the Sox and the Cubs, I think that as much as I hate to say it as a Cubs fan, I think the Sox definitely are looking a lot better this year. I could, as you mentioned, I could easily see them making a World Series run. I mean, they have the lineup for it, 100%. Um, and in terms of the Cubs, I mean, I feel like the Cubs still have a great roster. They just, the past couple of years, I feel like they've kind of underperformed. They have guys like Chris Bryant, who obviously he was the NL MVP in 2015, 2016. Um,
16.
and I know it's been a couple of years since then, obviously, but he's really been underperforming in my opinion the past couple of years. I think this is kind of a make or break season for him on whether he gets traded or not. At least I could easily say.
Yeah, he was kind of injured last year, pretty much the whole season. He had some leg and injuries. I mean, you have to take last year with a grain of salt. It was a 60-game season. I mean, the first
Yeah.
60 games for Rizzo in a normal year are usually slow for him as well. I mean, this year you got Rizzo coming up to free agency, you got Brian free agency, you got Javi in free agency. If the Cubs are not easily in first in at the trade deadline in the division, I could definitely see at least one or two of their core getting shipped out of town. Bryant's probably one of the most likely because he'll probably want the most money considering he's been an MVP in the past, even though he hasn't been performing. And
Yeah.
I think they'll keep Javi and Rizzo because they're just kind of like fan favorites.
Yeah.
But I mean, something's got to happen. They won't be able to afford probably not a majority, but they'll not be able to afford all three of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if they wanted to, be on the market for some pitchers, and obviously they took some hits to their pitching rotation this year and losing Lester and Darvish coming off of his Cy Young runner-up year. But Yeah, no. So I mean, if they wanted to have any chance of looking at some pitchers, strengthening their rotation this year, they'd definitely have to make some cuts in their.
Yeah, I don't know if you keep in touch with like the prospects with the Cubs, but I thought Albert Alazaway looked pretty solid last year, and he's looked good in spring training this year. I think he'll definitely have that fifth spot in the rotation. You got Breland Marquez coming up, the lefty. I think one start with the Cubs at the end of the season last year when games really didn't matter for him. And then I'm trying to think some other prospects that the Cubs have. You got Miguel Amaya, who could come and replace Contreras if they decide to ship Contreras out of town, because I think Contreras might have one more year of arbitration left. Yeah, I mean, you got Ed Howard down there, who's probably a couple years away, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm not too much in paying attention to the farming system of the Cubs, but I mean, if they have some good guys, I could definitely see them being a good team in the next couple of years, in the upcoming years. As long as they keep some of their core guys, I think that Rizzo is definitely a guy that they should keep out of those three. As you mentioned, also Baez, I think would be a good guy. So yeah, I could see the Cubs kind of, obviously this is a rebuilding season, which is why honestly I did not understand the Jock Peterson signing. I thought that it was kind of a silly signing in terms of rebuilding. I just don't see why you felt the need to pay a guy like Jock Peterson for only a 1-year deal when basically you're not really going to do much this year. I don't think they're going to try and make a World Series push or anything like that. So what did you think about that signing? I didn't think it was that great of a signing.
Well, I definitely think the Cubs could easily make the playoffs this year. I don't think they are considered rebuilding right now because I know Central is so weak. You just have to beat out the Cardinals and you're basically in. And at least if the Cubs do not have a good season, like the Cardinals pull away or something, the Jack Peterson signing could easily be someone they move at the deadline at like just a sign and trade for someone making a World Series push. Yeah. You get something from him, and maybe he performs this year and carries them to postseason berth. You never know. So I thought it was kind of a good signing. I don't know if it helps Chris Lake graduate Nick Martini out there, but Nick's been tearing it up at spring training. He's hit every ball hard. It's just Jack's probably going to be there in front of him.
Yeah, I think just looking at the stats really quick, Jock Peterson's hitting 222 right now, and Nick Martini's actually hitting 286. So batting average wise, Nick Martini's looking better, but Jock Peterson's also had 2 home runs compared to Martini's 0. And also Martini has had a couple less plate appearances, so that plays into it a little bit. But I definitely think
Nick has hit double. He's hit every game I've watched, every game he started I've watched, and he's hit the ball hard every single time, other than his first plate appearance. So I think he's definitely impressing Ross, the manager, and if he keeps performing, I think he has a good chance of making the roster.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool just to see a PR graduate starting for the Cubs come the opening day. It'd be something cool to see.
Yeah, he had a pretty cool at bat against the Cubs in I think it was 2019 or 2018.
Oh yeah, no, I think it was
Field.
Wasn't it last year? Stands. No, it wasn't last year because it was pre-COVID. I know.
I said 2018 or 2019.
Yeah. So, where he hit the home run at Wrigley.
It was actually his only home run in his career, other than he hit a home run against a position player, but that really doesn't count. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Making some predictions this year for the World Series. Who do you think? Who do you see making the World Series this year?
Yeah, you got the Dodgers out there, who's a very good team. They might have a slightly better roster than the Padres, but I'm a little biased here. I want the Padres in it. I love Tatis. And then in the AL, I mean, you got the Yankees, you got the White Sox, you got the Twins, you got the Angels. I'm going to say the White Sox. I think the White Sox might have the best roster in the AL. I mean, they've got the mix between the young and the old. and I think they're just going to play very well this season.
Yeah, that's actually exactly who I was going to go with. So,
Wow.
I guess in terms of keeping it different, I'll say, let's see. I think a Yankees-Dodgers matchup would be kind of interesting to see this year in the World Series. And I
Yeah,
definitely,
another one I could see would probably be like maybe either the Mets or the Braves down the NL. The AL East is stacked this year. Every team in the AL East is good. The worst team is the Marlins, and they made the playoffs last year. So the NL East is very good this year. So
yeah, yeah. All right. So your prediction is the Sox and the Padres, and just for keeping it different, I'll go with the Yankees and Dodgers. And with that, that basically concludes our MLB segment. So now that moves us on to our weekly segment, Player of the Week or Standout Team of the Week, which we described it last week, but basically we're just going to pick a player that we thought stood out this week or team that stood out this week. So I'll let you go first, Jack. Which team did you think?
yeah, I'm going back with another player, and it's a Cubs player from spring training, Nico Horner. He's hitting 700 through 10 at bats. He's 7 for 10. He's got 2 doubles and a home run. He's hitting every ball hard. I think his 3 other outs have been smoke line drives as well. I mean, he's been showing out. He's gained a lot of muscle in the offseason, and I think he will lock up the second base position for the Cubs this year.
Yeah, he was a guy that kind of started to emerge towards the end of last season, or was it 2 seasons ago that he started for the Cubs?
He came up for like won the series in 2019, and then was with the Cubs all of 2020, but was kind of bench player behind Kipnis.
Yeah, so it was last year, but he kind of started to emerge last year. So I think this year could definitely be a breakout season for him, which I think would be pretty nice coming from a Cubs fan. So my guy, I'm gonna go towards the NHL, and I'm gonna pick Blackhawks forward Alex DeBrincat. He's really been performing great. He's kind of helped the Hawks over this past week stretch. He actually went on an 8-game point streak over this last week, and as Jack mentioned, he recently scored his 100th NHL goal along with his 200th NHL point, which is a pretty cool milestone. So yeah, I think he's really helped the Hawks out these past couple of games. I think he's second in the league behind Kane in points. So yeah, I think he's my guy for Player of the Week this week.
Yeah, him and Kane on that second line have been great. Yeah, I think Kane's second in the league, and DeBrincat might be third in the league, which, I mean, that's insane, having 2 guys on the same line with that many points. So,
yeah. With that concludes our podcast, concludes our second episode. So, yeah, I thought this was a great podcast. We had some good segments this week, I thought. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great talking about sports again. I had a blast.
Yeah, I definitely, with spring training starting up and the MLB season right around the corner, I think we'll definitely have some good news to talk about. NFL free agency I think there'll be some big names hopefully signing this year. So that'll be something cool in the future. So
don't forget about March Madness either and conference tournaments.
Oh yeah, that'll be great too. So yeah, we got our work cut out for us these next couple of weeks, and hopefully you guys can tune in more. Hear us keep talking, I guess. So yeah. All right.